Hello, welcome to the Learning Playlist, a podcast for the major and general education courses under the tutelage of Mr. Ryan Dave Ryla, USJR College Instructor. This project is a supplement to the said courses and as a means to share knowledge to the public at large. To help the podcast grow, kindly follow us at facebook.com/the learning playlist. And now, on to our show. Hello and welcome. I am Ryan Dave Ryla, Political Science Instructor for the University of San Jose Recoletos, School of Arts and Sciences, Department of Social Sciences and Philosophy. In today's lecture, we're going to talk about European politics from the perspective of developed states. This lecture is for the class Political Science Elective 6, European Politics. For this lecture, we are first going to cover how European kingdoms transformed into modern nation states. What are the factors behind this and what made it possible? Second, we are going to talk about comparative politics as the main framework for this course and what to compare in terms of the political processes involved in the making of European states. And finally, we are going to talk about the workshop for this module. Alright, first topic would be European development. The modern European state, as we know it today, has many components, but primarily, I think we should discuss first about the way that Europeans transformed their respective medieval kingdoms into centralized states. So we first have the basis for the modern European state, and that is the coming of, or rather the creation of, centralized bureaucratic states that eventually replaced the rather patrimonial system of government found in feudalism. As Europeans became more and more, let's say, as they became more and more centralized, and their idea or their notion of who they are, no, their notion of nationalism began to solidify, they first had to facilitate this creation of the modern state, coming from the 1500s all the way to the 20th century and into the 21st. So the idea of a centralized bureaucratic state actually has its traditions or has its roots with the creation of specifically that particular institution in Europe during the medieval era, and that is the Catholic Church. Now the Church, before the schism of Martin Luther in the 1500s, did develop for quite some time, for centuries. They did develop a rather bureaucratic system that benefited it, and that is the creation of a professional and celibate clergy. Now, by no means are the civil servants of modern European states celibate. However, they did follow the template set by the Catholic Church, and by the creation of this bureaucratic system wherein instead of fiefdoms and of vassalage, there is a clear hierarchy found in organizations, particularly not only in the church, but was copied by the budding European states of the 1500s all the way to the 20th and the 21st centuries. So in this regard, we can see that at the core of the modern European state is the idea that there is a clear hierarchy of power, a clear political hierarchy that is the backbone of their modern state, followed by the creation of an industrialized capitalist economy, which naturally evolved from the mercantilist economies of the 1500s all the way to the 1700s. So the creation of a capitalist economy out of this mercantilist economic model, also as well as with the scientific advances brought about by many European discoveries and, of course, by the funding of key European institutions, in particular the funding of universities that facilitated um, education, and not only education but more in that facilitated scientific inquiry for various European kingdoms and then later on nation states. It created the means to actually achieve certain economic advantages over the rest of the world over time. And as you can see, this complemented well the centralized bureaucratic state, which was again the bed, no, the foundation of modern European states. And of course, industrialization later came in the 1800s to actually stimulate further the capitalist economy and make it what we know of it today, no? As an economic model that relies on mass production and mass consumption. Eventually, these secondary advantages also brought forth more advantages in the forms of advanced military and property rights for its citizens, which is a necessity for economic growth, and then mass information of the masses with the coming of more modernized printing presses, the coming of newspapers, magazines, and any other means of disseminating information used either by the state or by private individuals and organizations. So, in this regard, we can see that the modern European state is actually a product of, let's say, um, not only policies that were chosen, but rather a natural product of the evolution of the economic models of European states. But let's not forget also that behind this impetus to create a centralized bureaucratic state and with all of its attachments, there has always been the specter of colonialism, which actually for many fueled the rise of the modern European states as we know it as well. So in this regard, we can see a mixture of factors that actually brought forth the modern European state. So for us to understand further how Europe actually, or how European countries actually develop into what they are, perhaps I would like to ask the class to watch the TED Talk of James A. Robinson, and I will give the link later, to watch his TED Talks on their work with Daron Acemoglu on Why Nations Fail. It's actually a book, and it has a very interesting thesis as to what makes countries successful, and what constitutes as the factors that allow countries to fail. So, in this regard, I think it is a good starting point for us in this class to actually watch or to actually listen to the arguments of James A. Robinson and Daron Acemoglu in Why Nations Fail. Links to this document will be provided later. In summary, they sum up their factors into two broad categories: inclusive institutions and extractive institutions. For Professor Neil Ferguson, who is quite a well-known academician nowadays, there are six killer applications of prosperity that Europeans first acquired and utilized that are now openly available to any country that wishes to use them. And so perhaps we can go through the following killer applications as Professor Neil Ferguson mentions, and the link of his body of work, his book in particular, is also available in the next slides to come. Okay. So what do we compare in comparative politics, and of course by extension, what do we need to compare across European states as your country case studies? Well, first we will compare, just like with the discussion earlier on um, on the making of European states. We first need to compare their political institutions, meaning we need to understand what are the key components of their political system as we know it today. And from there, we will move forth from their structures of government, from who has authority, who makes the decisions in government. We will move forth into the realm of political culture and how do ordinary people relate to their government in key issues and in key moments in their history. Alongside political institutions, there are economic structures that help facilitate the politics of a country. And I think that also needs to be elucidated in this course with the help of your country case studies, of course. And then later on, we will have three distinct issues, or rather, three distinct, let's say, three distinct categories. But by no means are your case studies to be limited by these three distinct categories, no. But I would like to highlight them because these are very crucial in the weeks to come. First, we need to discuss about their social issues. What are the burning questions of the day for European states? Is it war? Is it immigration? Is it, let's say, is it power sharing among various groups in society, etc.? Which also brings us to the next key issue, and that is civil society, or rather, key component, civil society. And talking about civil society means that we need to tackle the various smaller groups in society like NGOs or non-government organizations, private corporations, and also very powerful individuals as well. That's also part of this discussion, no, or of this point of comparison, that even within political systems there are personalities, no matter how these personalities are, let's say, perhaps you might think they might be insignificant, but truly they are not. They are part of the way the political system is structured. So the way we look at all of these factors combined, or these points of comparisons combined, we are looking at political systems as a whole. We are looking at your country case studies of Spain, Portugal, no, not Portugal, Spain, France, the UK, Italy, and Germany. The way we look at them, we tend to look at them as complex phenomena, complex social phenomena that can be understood if we simply try to dissect and to make sense of its parts. So think of this one. Think of this exercise in terms of this lecture today. Think of this points of comparison as your Bandai kit, your assembly kit for your case studies. Okay. So we use comparison as a method in comparative politics, and of course by extension in European politics, as a means to understand not only similarities and differences across multiple case studies, and there are many factors that are involved. We also try to use comparison um, as a means to research, to move forward the knowledge about not only your case studies or your country case studies, but about how we make sense of the world in general as political scientists and as comparativists. So, with regards to research questions, for comparativists, what matters is what they want to accomplish, what they hope to accomplish. And from there, the logic of comparison is actually determined. Okay? What the researcher hopes to accomplish in their research questions and how they go about answering those research questions is what determines the validity of comparison as a method for this subject. And as I mentioned earlier, we are looking at complex phenomenon, therefore we are looking at complex causality, or different factors that tend to affect each other. It can be political, it can be social, economic, or cultural even. And as comparativists, viewing countries as a social phenomenon, viewing countries as a whole is crucial. It is critical in their analysis of understanding what make countries tick. For your workshop, okay, here are some of the details. Um, I guess it is I guess it is best to first look at the links or try to access the links to the resources, because these links will provide you further further knowledge and further details about the arguments that Professor Neil Ferguson and Professors Robinson and Asimoglu argue in their respective books. And I think their body of work is useful for this class of comparativists, because here in comparative politics, we are trying to understand how states, how they operate. And by looking at the works of Ferguson, Robinson, and Asimoglu, I hope that we can build a strong foundation for how we try to understand or how we try to unpack European politics. For your workshop as well, with regards to the topic, I would like you to research more on the national myths of your countries and how they develop into countries over time. Okay, there will be questions that will provoke you to research and think about these national myths and development. So this will be done on an individual basis, but as groups, I encourage you to actually communicate with one another and try to choose one question out of the choice of questions that are provided for you in the workshop. So you can access the workshop via the learning management system, Brightspace, and you can also make use of MS Teams. No, sorry for the error in the PowerPoint. That's supposed to be MS Teams and Brightspace. So it is available from September 6th to 10, the deadline being the midnight of September 10th. Okay, so the deadline being the midnight of September 10th. Okay. And that ends our discussion for this week. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.